now, I need a miracle. Hurry up now, I need a miracle. Stranded, reaching out. I call your name, but you're not around. I say your name, but you're not around. Crashing, hit a wall. Right now, I need a miracle. Hurry up now, I need a miracle. Stranded, reaching out. I call your name, but you're not around.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Gainsight's Chief Strategist of Pulse Programs, Ruben Robigo.
Woo! Awesome, big crowd today. Awesome. You've all made it past the post-lunch coma. Congratulations. Continuing on the theme of career success, we have a great panel. Before I introduce the person who's going to introduce the panel, which is interesting, we want to continue to have you engaged in these sessions. Slido will continue to be live. We're in the room Coachella. You can get to that by the app or going to slido.com, Pulse 2018, and just go to the room Coachella. I'd like to introduce my colleague, TK Kessler, who has the best smile in the house. Give him a warm welcome, everybody.
How's everyone doing? Fired up? Fired up? Let me bring on our esteemed panel. So I'm going to do a quick introductions and a fun fact for my panel here. First, we have Jamie Jeff, who's going to be moderating this, Managing Director of Coastal Cloud. Fun fact: he was run over by a tractor in his first job picking corn for a farmer's market. Welcome, Jamie. Sanders Slavens, VP of Support Services and Success for IBM Collaboration Solutions. Fun fact: has 3 chickens in his backyard. 2 are laying blue eggs and 1 is laying brown eggs. What about the white eggs? Okay, all right. All right, the last panelist we have here, Lorna Henry, Global VP of Customer Success and Support for App Annie. Fun fact: worked as a seasonal firefighter for 2 summers while in college.
Wow.
A round of applause for our panel.
All right. Thank you, TK.
Thanks, TK.
So before we kick ourselves off here, TK gave a great intro and certainly some fun facts. You guys come from very different backgrounds, different companies. Why don't you each give the audience a little bit more context for your perspectives?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Sanders Slavens. I run product support, professional services, and customer success for IBM Collaboration Solutions. Our collaboration solutions are mail, chat, meetings, enterprise social, persistent chat with AI baked into it. And a large number of our customers are enterprise customers. So we have a lot of complexities in the relationships we have, even amongst different portfolios at IBM. So some of our customers who buy our collaboration products are completely in different organizations at that customer than people that buy our commerce products, for instance. So for our customer success mission, there's a fair amount of specialness that we have to give to them, and based on their size and complexity.
Excellent. Thank you. Lorna?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Lorna Henry, and I head up customer success and support for a company called App Annie. App Annie provides analytics for companies that are providing apps for a device that most of you probably have in your hand right now, a mobile phone. There are 3 billion smartphones in the world today and projected to be 6 billion by 2020. So it's a lot of infrastructure out there, a lot of computing power, and we provide the analysis and data to help make those apps better. App Annie is VC funded. We're privately held. We've been around for about 8 years, 450 employees across the world. We have 13 offices. And we work with a huge range of companies, from very small gaming startups to very large customers. And part of the reason that Sanders and I wanted to provide our background is that customer success is truly an art. And there's really a lot of ways to get to the right outcome for your company and for your platform. Some of us in the room come from small, scrappy companies that have very limited resources and processes, whereas others, like Sanders and his team, come from big established companies with a lot of process and a tremendous amount of best practice that's already in place. Some of the platforms require heavy integration, and with heavy integration, there's a lot of risk at the beginning of that customer relationship, but once the integration's complete, the churn rates are very low. And others of us work for SaaS or even data as a service platforms, which can be turned off at the drop of a hat. So I just really encourage you, as you spend these 2 days at Pulse and as you listen to Sanders and I, take these learnings and advice back and contextualize them within what's right for your business and with your platform. So with that, Jamie,
Excellent.
start us off.
Thanks, guys. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of context and backdrop for this session. As many of you know, we're in the midst of a significant transition from a transactional economy to an outcome economy. And all of us in this room are really at the heart of that transition. As we move and our companies move and our relationships with our customers move to one where the success of our companies is much more closely tied to the success of our customers. And so as we were preparing for this session, what we wanted to do is really help empower all of you all with some very tactical and tangible things that you can do to help better drive the success of your customers and therefore the success of your companies. So we're going to go through this kind of David Letterman style in a top 10 list. We're actually the only session here that has sound effects incorporated into our session, so we're very excited, and all of our fingers are crossed that that's going to work well.
You told me it would work well.
I'm hoping it will.
Okay.
So that's why my fingers are crossed. So anyway, coming out of this, we really hope to turn all of you into kick-ass CSMs. And optimally, you'll end up on the Oprah show someday with her proclaiming how awesome all of you are. So without further ado, we're going to dive in, starting in reverse order with number 10. Coming to Sanders first. Number 10, anticipate customer needs and bring advice.
Okay, so before we get to the question 10, the top 10 here, by show of hands, how many people want to be a kick-ass CSM? Okay. By show of hands, that's most of you. By show of hands, how many people believe they're a kick-ass CSM now? Ooh, we got some good people here. All right, so we'll ask good questions later. All right, so top 10 trusted advisor tips for customer success. Number 10, anticipate customer needs and bring advice. So look, to be a kick-ass CSM, you have to be proactive, right? You have to anticipate people's needs. And an analogy I'd like to draw upon is racing. So Formula One race cars, other racing establishments, they teach drivers to drive to the horizon, right? You're supposed to be looking at the horizon, and keeping cars in front of you, in your vision, right? But don't just be driving behind the car because you won't know what's going on down the road and you'll just be completely reactive. So as you look to your customer set and as you kind of wake up and go to work and think about your customers, think about the journey they're on and think about what's their horizon. It's not just they have this one issue today or they're trying to do a little bit of adoption in this line of business. It's how do you help them drive to the horizon and be proactive?
I love that metaphor, really kind of driving towards the outcome that you're shooting for. All right, moving on to number 9 next. There we go. Lorna, advisors aren't yes people.
Yeah. Advisors aren't yes people. So you can see the little image there. And it seems like it's pretty tough to make our customers happy all the time, and it's pretty easy to make them mad sometimes. So, in thinking about this, I thought, I know all you CSMs out there, and I know you because I am you, and I've been a CSM for a lot of years. And CSMs are people pleasers. They want to do everything to make their customers happy. Well, here's the secret. That actually will turn out to not make your customers happy when you're not setting boundaries on what it is that you do. So some advice here is to really set the boundaries of your role early in the relationship with the customer and make clear what you're going to do and what other resources might be available for them in the business. At App Annie, we have an onboarding deck, and so right from the beginning, have a slide that lays out, this is the role of the CSM, and these are other resources that are available to you in the business. We have sales engineers and value consultants and professional services, and we clarify this is what's included in your contract and in your service, and these additional services are available for an incremental fee. We also clarify what we expect them to do in the relationship. How many of you have a platform or a service where you just do all the work and the customer gets all the value with no effort on their part? I don't see any hands out there. One. Okay, great, awesome. So we lay out like, hey, these are the best practices that we see around our customer base to get true value out of this platform, and tell them what that looks like for their role. Does it look like bi-monthly meetings or regular QBRs, or identifying a project that you work on together right from the beginning? But be clear and be honest with them about what their role is and what the CSM is going to do and not do. An example of this is I had a senior CSM who worked for me on some big global accounts, and she was a technical expert in the field of organic search. The platform, the company that I was working for at the time, scaled organic search, and it made it very easy, but there was also and always very deep technical work that has to be done on websites so it ranks well. And she was getting involved with all of her customers' deep technical projects. The problem was this: she had 12 Fortune 500 customers. And the more she worked and the more hours she put in, the angrier her customers were becoming, because there was no possible way she could do that deep technical work, even though she knew how to do it, and the role of a CSM. So by laying out those boundaries and making it clear from the beginning, you'll help your customers understand where their role starts, where yours ends. And that's really the role of a CSM, is to enable, help them adopt, drive that value, but not do it for them.
I love that last point of your role of a CSM is not necessarily to be a doer, but one to be a guide or a Sherpa, if you will. This next one is going to pick up nicely from where you left off there, Lorna, with number 8. Ask open-ended questions and listen.
Right. So there's a quote up there: I have no special talent, I am only passionately curious. Does anyone know who that quote's ascribed to? It's Albert Einstein. He said, I have no special talent, I'm only passionately curious. Isn't that interesting? And how do we take that quote and apply it to our customer success practice and our interactions with our customers? Well, one way you can do it is by asking those open-ended questions and really listen to your customers' responses. Open-ended questions tend to have longer answers. They're not yes/no type of answers, and they get at your customer's knowledge or opinion or what they're thinking about a particular topic. Open-ended questions will typically pass the control of the conversation over to your customer, with them doing most of the responding. If you find yourself in a conversation and you are having most of the control and doing most of the speaking, you're probably asking closed-end questions. The open-ended questions can really help you navigate and problem solve with your customer as well, and get kind of deeper order, more business initiative type discussions. An example of using this happened at a large account that we had. It was very at risk. So we set up an in-person meeting with our customer, and we were meeting with several of the day-to-day users as well as a number of vice presidents. It was a large financial company. And we knew that our competitor had been in the account and trying to displace us. So we were scheduling this meeting to really kind of try to identify some of the risky issues in the account. We also knew that our competitor had just launched a new feature. And it was a feature that not only did we not have, but we had gone and spoken with our product team and asked them to get it on the product roadmap. And they had analyzed it, and they looked at our customer base, and they said, no, we are not going to put this in the product roadmap. It just doesn't apply to enough of our customers. So we went into this meeting knowing this, and we were having a discussion about the future of our relationship together. And one of the directors asked us very pointedly, hey, do you have this new feature? And this new feature happened to be tracking keywords and identifying YouTube content for for the client. So we sat there knowing that we didn't have the feature, and we started asking some open-ended questions about their business initiatives and why they wanted the feature and what is it that they were trying to accomplish. And we discovered there was a part of our platform that actually could meet part of their needs. But as we asked more questions and said, well, tell me more about the business initiative this is really driving, and are your customers on YouTube, and how many of them are finding you that way? We discovered that they were essentially looking for customers that were looking for 401k advice and investing advice. They weren't looking for it on YouTube. So by asking those open-ended questions and being comfortable with a pause, and the executives started looking around each other and said, yeah, I mean, our customers don't come to us from YouTube. And not only that, we don't create YouTube content nor post it. So by taking the time to have that open-ended discussion and have a deeper dialogue, not only did we diffuse the objection, but we got the renewal.
That's great. I want to amplify something you said partway through there. You said to take judge of if you're on a call as a CSM and you're doing all of the talking, but the customer is not. That's a good gut check. What are some other sort of gut checks that you can apply to assess if the balance is right, if you're asking the right type of questions?
I would say yes/no questions will tend to indicate that they're closed type of questions. Definitely the balance of the conversation. I think the other thing that I've learned over time, and this is challenging to do, is to be comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with that pause and let your customer have that soak time. That's when they'll come up with either the deeper answer or else an honest answer about a problem in the account that they really weren't going to tell you about, because both sides will tend to avoid difficult conversations. And those difficulties are in your account. whether they tell you about them or not, they're in your account. So the best thing you can do is get that out and up in the open so you can work together on a solution.
Put it on the table.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Moving along to number 7 then. Sanders, do what you say you will do.
Yeah, so we use the word trusted advisor, right? And so one of those 2 key words is trust. Right? So as you look around, what does trust mean? Who do you trust? Think about who you, and why do you trust them? You trust people that will tell you the truth, and you trust people that have your best interest in heart. And sometimes they'll tell you the truth, and you may not want to hear it, but they have your best interest at heart. So as you look at your customers, you have to do what you say you'll do, because the basis of trust is doing what you say you did. So if the customer asks you for usage reports and you say, I'll get that to you tomorrow, get it to them tomorrow. If there's something that they need and you say you'll do it for them, make sure you do it. And by the way, if something happens and you can't do it and you don't do what you said you were going to do, own it, right? Tell the customer, I'm sorry, I will make this right. And make sure that from then on they understand you do what you say you'll do.
I love that. So keep your promises. When you mess up, though, no excuses.
Yes.
All right. Sanders, we're going to stick with you for this number 6. Know the capability and value of your products.
Yeah, so this is a 2-part. So there's kind of 2 pieces to this: capability and value. Right? So knowing the capability of your product is fundamental. Right? Let me repeat. Knowing the capability of your product is fundamental. You will never, ever, ever be a kick-ass CSM if you don't know what your product does, because it tees off the second word of advice. Right? Advisor, advice. If I don't know anything, I can't give you any advice. Well, I guess I could give you advice, but it may not be good advice, right? So you have to know what your product does. The second piece is outside of, let's say, the capability or the feature set. You have to understand what value that capability provides, right? It's not just the feature, it's the value, it's the outcome, right? To give an example, we have a new way to work via new email interface called IBM Verse, right? And so there's a feature in IBM Verse that has a set of pictures. And you can put the pictures up part of there, and these are people that are important to you, right? And then we have some AI that will crawl through your mail and calendar and come up with people that the system thinks are important to you now. Now, when you get mail from those important people, right, you get a badge or you get a push notification. I just described to you the capability of IBM Verse, a capability, right? I didn't describe the value. Like, what's the value in that? The value or the outcome is never miss a mail from your boss. So if you use IBM Verse, right, and you get email from your boss, you will get push notifications to your phone, you'll get badged, you'll never miss a mail from the boss. And that's the value statement. So again, you have to know the capability of what you do, your feature set, but you also have to know the value of what that's bringing to your customers.
So if I'm a CSM, how do I gauge like how deep I need to go, right? In terms of understanding my product, you know, I don't need to go as deep as an engineer.
No, not at all, not at all. You have to know, you know, the basic functionality of the product, what it does, right? You know, kind of similar to someone like, let's say, in offering management or product management, you know, or in sales, right? Maybe a little deeper than sales, but not as deep as the product development team.
Right. Very good. All right, here comes number 5, getting to the pinnacle here. Lorna, learn your customer's business.
Yeah, this is a good one. Sanders, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, knowing your product inside and out is absolutely key to being a trusted advisor, and really, it's table stakes for being a CSM. But the other piece of it is really knowing your customer's business. And this may seem a little bit more advanced or for more experienced CSMs, and you might be sitting there and saying to yourself, well, my customer is in connected cars, or my customer does online ticket sales, and I'm a cloud security expert, or I'm a marketing automation expert. I don't know anything about those businesses. Well, I will tell you, there is a wealth of information out there if you're willing to go that extra mile. You can set up Google alerts for your customers as well as their competitors. There's trade industry articles. There's TechCrunch. If your customer is publicly traded, there's their annual reports and their 10Ks and their 10Qs, which contain a ton of information about their strategy and their pain points and markets that they're looking to go into. When I started out as a CSM, I had about 15 of our very largest accounts, and I went to go visit with StubHub, which was one of our biggest customers. And I met with my customer, and I learned about his strategic initiatives, and I went back to the office, and the next day, I got a Google alert telling me about one of their competitors, which had inked a deal with a sports team in another part of the country. And I looked at that Google alert, and I said to myself, well, gee, he probably already knows about this, and gosh, this would just be kind of embarrassing to send over to him because, you know, he's probably follows this competitor already. And how in the world am I going to tell anything to StubHub? My customer's been working there for 10 years. This is ridiculous for me in like a couple days to think I know his business. And then finally I realized I was just talking myself out of it. It was being absurd. And I just sent the article over and said, hey, I ran across this thinking about our conversation the other day. I thought you might find this interesting. Well, the next day, I got an email from him, and he said, thank you so much for sending that article over. I was just about to walk into a meeting with my boss, and I've been firefighting all morning. I hadn't had time to check the news. And this particular topic came up in our conversation because we're talking about strategic partnerships with sports teams around the country. I so appreciate you sending this to me. It's so nice to know there's another set of eyes and ears out there watching out for me. Thank you. That's becoming a trusted advisor.
I love that advice because that's the sort of thing that a brand new CSM, whether they're new to being a CSM or just with a new company, those are the sorts of things that they can do to help their customers from day one, even while they're still learning their company's product and the value proposition, just being helpful to that customer and showing that they care to pay attention to their business can really move the relationship forward.
Absolutely.
All right, moving along to number 4. Any Glengarry, Glen Ross fans in the building? All right, good, a couple out there. We have a slight twist on the old adage of the ABCs. Sanders, take it away.
Yeah, so for CSMs, don't always be closing. You know, be consulting. You know, consultants get coffee in CSM land, right? So I guess I'll ask a show of hands. How many of you are familiar with TSIA? How many of y'all are members of TSIA? Awesome. So J.B. Wood, who's the CEO of TSIA, has this great quote around customer success where he says, selling won't help, but helping will sell. And what he means by that is CSMs can't be seen as someone that's trying to sell the customer. If you all want to be kick-ass CSM, right? You can't be seen as just someone that's trying to sell them things. You need to be the trusted advisor, someone that's giving them advice, someone that's trying to help them help their company, as you were just saying, right? And giving them advice on how to do that, how to get adoption, how to get more value, right? Think about it in your own lives. When you go into some store and you are very clear that that person in the store is trying to sell you something, how do you treat that person, right? How do you interact with that person, as opposed to you go in a store and there's someone and they are just trying to help you. They're trying to help understand what you need and what you'd like. How do you feel about that, right? Well, it's the same way your CSM customers feel. So the big thing here, always be consulting. Consulting is what will drive adoption, will drive trust, and will drive outcomes, which ultimately will help reduce churn.
Excellent. Thank you, Sanders. All right, we are now to the top 3. So stay with us here, folks. Number 3, Lorna, take ownership.
Right, take ownership. The buck stops here.
Where'd you get the graphic?
Yeah, that's a CSM buck. Yeah, really, when you think about your business, there's a lot of different contacts with the customer. Of course, there's a CSM who's generally having the most dialogue with the customer, but you also have account managers, strategic account managers, renewal managers, invoicing, accounts payable, and the managers for all of those departments. A lot of times, the CSM will be having a conversation with the customer, and they'll say, hey, your AM was talking to me earlier this morning about an upsell. Can I ask you a few things about it? If the CSM is on the spot like that, and they don't know anything about the conversation or the topic, that's awkward. It doesn't make anyone look good. So really, what I've tended to find with this particular topic is that will tend to be internal friction. It's more the departments kind of, moving around doing their own thing without really understanding that there is a quarterback in the business. So it's really important for the CSM to make clear and for your boss to make clear to the other departments that everything really does need to flow through you. It doesn't mean you're in control of every conversation, but you're at least aware of it. The emails get CC'd to the CSM, or as appropriate, they can get BCC'd. Because really, it's important to this, not only to the CSM's credibility, but also to the company credibility that everyone looks like they know what each other is doing. So that's a really important piece.
Yeah, I think that the key part of this is really looking at this through the value to the customer, right? Where I've seen pushback in putting this in place internally is you'll hear comments like, oh, that's going to make CSMs a bottleneck, or you're just being a control freak, right? And the reality is this isn't about doing it because that's what the CSM wants. It's what the customer wants. The last thing the customer wants is 15 people from the same company all calling them, emailing them, wanting to get some of their time.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Top 2 coming, folks. Number 2, Lorna, sticking with you. Understand what your customer needs to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Sanders said, focusing on the outcomes for the company are critically important. I'm going to take this to the next level down, and that is, what do you need to do to make your customer into a superstar? So that's really talking to your day-to-day contact, your champion in the account, and understanding what are his or her KPIs, what is their boss interested in, what makes their job hard to do on a day-to-day basis, and how can you help? How can you help amplify their accomplishments? How can you help get them praise? How can you ensure that in a QBR, they're actually talking to a lot of the value that's been provided by your product? This one I learned the hard way, as we learn most of our lessons in the School of Hard Knocks. The setting was a QBR, with our champion and her boss, as well as her boss's boss. The QBR was being presented by one of my best CSMs. She was an ex-consultant. She was poised, smart, and polished. I opened up the QBR, and she proceeded to walk through this fabulous deck that we'd put together, listing out all this ROI, all this value that the customer had accomplished through our platform. At the end of the QBR, after she got done presenting all these incredible results, we looked at each other across the room and we smiled at each other. We were both glowing in this phenomenal QBR we had just done. And I turned to the other VP in the room and I asked him, "What's your reaction to what you heard today?" And he paused and he looked at me and he said, "You know, I'm disappointed." And my stomach just lurched out from under me and I thought to myself, so much for open-ended questions. And then he went on and he said, "You know, don't get me wrong, these are great results, but I would have wanted to hear from my own team about these, not from a vendor." And you know, we went on and we had, you know, a good conversation and we closed the renewal and we actually got an upsell. But on the plane back, the CSM and I were talking. I said, "You know, I think we really learned a valuable lesson here. It's really important for our customer and our champion to be speaking to the QBRs about the value obtained." And we thought about how can we scale this across our process, and we went back to our Gainsight QBR playbook and we added a couple of steps. And we said, you know, for every QBR, we're going to have 2 or 3 slides that the customer, the champion's going to present, and we're going to do the slide for them, we're going to do the talk track, we're going to practice it with them, we're going to make it super easy for them. But they are going to talk about their accomplishments, and we're going to give them that setting with their boss to talk about them. And when we put this in place, it was just phenomenally successful. Not only did it help us solidify champions in the account, it also helped us ensure the executive was in the meeting, which is also a tricky thing with QBRs, is making sure the boss and the boss's boss are there. And now our champion, because they were speaking to the amazing accomplishments, were really helping us get that E-level person in the room. But we also heard about all these creative ways they were using our platform that we had no idea they were using it this way. And it gave us all kinds of other use cases that we were able to bring back to the business and scale across our customer base. So that was something that was, you know, very beneficial to us in terms of kind of thinking through how to make your customer into a rock star.
Yeah, I love that because so often we focus on those internal metrics, right? The customer must be successful because they renewed or they upsold, right? But man, getting your champion promoted, like that's a clear sign of customer success.
Commitment.
Right? That's right, absolutely. You know, we were joking yesterday with Sanders from IBM. We've all heard the phrase, nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. But imagine if it was turned the other way, everybody gets promoted for hiring IBM. Think about the impact that would have.
And I told him we'd put that into the plan for 2018.
Future marketing phrase. So you heard it here first. All right, down to number 1.
Numero uno.
Here it comes. Coming to you, Sanders.
All right. Forget happy, focus on customer outcomes. And I will tell you that I almost had him play that Pharrell Williams song, but Ruben thought it was a little too much. So look, this is one of the most important things that you can take away here. It's like people want to say, my customer's happy. They want to focus on the happy. You know, teams get together and said, oh, yes, we had a meeting with the customer, and they were very happy. Right? And listen, it's not that we want our customers to be angry, but you need to have your customers have outcomes, right? Because if they're happy, but they're not getting any value from your product, right, they're going to churn. We could argue it may be happy churn, right? So you can happily churn. You know, I love you, but I'm leaving you. But you will churn. So you really need to focus on the customer outcomes. You know, is the customer getting value? Do they have adoption? You know, these are the sorts of things are more important than happy. And I'll give you an example. Some customers you have may not be happy, but they may be super successful and be getting great outcomes. And you get in meetings with them, and they could be a little bit awkward, right? Or a little bit uncomfortable, like, wow, they're really giving me a hard time. Well, they're giving you a hard time because they want more value. They're getting so much outcome out of your stuff, they want more. I'll give you an example of a customer we have. So there's a large bank, actually in the South, there's a large bank headquartered in the South that uses our enterprise social, actually on up to their CEO, because this bank sees the value of our enterprise social as bringing more transparency and speed of transparency to the bank, right? And so they created these ideas of jams, where the CEO will do a blog post, right, and then they'll do a live jam with all the people, right, in the bank, right, and his executive staff does that too, and it's very important, and they're getting really great outcomes, but they gave us a really hard time a while back because they want better UX, right? They want different filtering. They're pushing us, but they're super successful. I think they're a little happier now, but my point is, make sure your customers have great outcomes as opposed to just, I had a meeting with the customer, they're really happy. I took them to the game, right? That's happy customers churn all the time.
They do. The flip side of that is dissatisfied customers don't always seem unhappy. Lorna, how do you get to the truth in those sorts of situations?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Sanders said. I think something tricky that CSMs always work on is rapport. And I think rapport can get in the way of outcome, because I have seen CSMs as well who are like focused on sports or taking the customers to games or taking them out to drinks and what have you. So just be careful. Those are wonderful things to do to build a relationship, but make sure those outcomes are happening as well. So to get to your question, Jamie, about how do you get at that dissatisfied customer that's not telling you, man, you got to ask. You have got to ask the uncomfortable question. And we actually got to the point where we scripted them, and I was managing a large account one time. I thought everything was happy, and we had scripted out the questions and said, hey, tell me about how you're feeling about our relationship. If the renewal's coming up in a couple of months, how does that look? And when you're working with a customer all the time and things are generally going well, those can feel like uncomfortable questions to ask. They feel almost too direct. So by scripting it and forcing ourselves to ask the first few times, we were getting all kinds of information. I was working with Target at one point and thought everything was fantastic. And it was the very end of the call, and I thought, I didn't ask any of those uncomfortable questions. I'm just going to ask one real quick. Hey, the renewal's coming up. How's it looking? And he told me, well, my boss wants me to do an RFP. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I would have never known that. I would have just been going along. We would have sent that paperwork 30 days in advance. Well, out there was an RFP that we wouldn't have even known about or responded to. And as I mentioned before, those things are happening in your account. They are happening. And the most important thing is that you pull those nuggets out, you lift them, you figure out what the risks are, and you work with your team to mitigate them. You're not going to mitigate all of them, but I can guarantee you're not going to mitigate them if you don't know about them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to do a quick recap. What we wanted to do was give you guys something tangible that you could take away from today. So if you don't have your phones out, this next slide is the money slide that you can take your photos of and capture everything that we've talked through today. So real quick, number 10, anticipate customer needs. Lead your customers to that outcome. Number 9, advisors aren't yes people. Don't just be an order taker. Challenge your customer, drive them forward. Number 8, use those open-ended questions and really listen. And I love what Lorna said about being comfortable with silence. Let your customer fill that silence. You'll learn something when they do. Do what you say you will do. Keep your promises and own your mistakes when you mess up. Number 6, know your products. How are they being used to meet customer needs? Not just what are all the features, but connect the features with the value. Number 5, learn your customer's business. Understand their KPIs, their pain points, schedule those value touches along the way. Number 4, the ABCs, always be consulting. Selling won't help, but helping sells. Remember that. Number 3, take ownership. Don't burden your customers with your org chart. They shouldn't need a Rolodex to figure out who to call. Give them one name, one email, one phone number, and then you can do the internal routing when that's necessary. And stay on top of who else is talking to them along the way. Number 2, know what your customers need to be successful. Look, just figure out what it's going to take to get them promoted, and that's what you want to focus on. And then number 1, outcomes over happiness. ROI is much, much greater than rapport. So, all right, we've got a few minutes left. We're going to switch to Slido now and take some Q&A. I'm going to start with this first one here because this is really good for the audience. I'm sure we have a mix of high touch and low touch. Lorna, Sanders, how can a CSM be proactive with 70 plus mid-sized clients and a support team that can't keep up? You know, I look at this and I hear this a lot from CSMs. It's like, I want to be proactive, but I can't get myself out of this mountain of reactive work that I have to respond to.
Well, I'll try that, then you can take it back.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, in my opinion, that's what Gainsight is for, in my opinion, right? I mean, you map out your journey map, you automate where your customer is in that journey map, and you should, have best practice over, how their adoption is, like have, the idea of having a pace setter group, right? And so how is my current customer against the pace setter group, and using Gainsight technology and other technologies to scale to make that happen. Now, I can't fix your support team, right? That I can't fix, but in terms of being proactive and where your customer needs to be in the journey map, I think that's what you do.
Yeah, and I would say, I feel your pain, man. 70 accounts is a lot, and there's probably fires coming in all the time. So I'd say there's a couple things there. One is just look at what you can do to scale. Like, are there any things that being a trusted advisor does not necessarily need to mean high touch. Obviously, if you've got big global accounts, you're going to be a high touch CSM. But if you're managing 70 accounts, look for ways. Can you do a webinar with, maybe you can segment your group into a couple of verticals and do a webinar. Maybe you can get a use case that scales across a couple of them and use your marketing automation or use Gainsight to get those out. And then the other piece is look at those 70 accounts, look at your Gainsight, see which ones are at risk, or you just got to do a straight prioritization on the higher revenue or the more strategic logos in that 70, and you're not going to necessarily be able to do all of them. Because I feel for CSMs because I see them all the time and they just burn out putting in 20-hour days because their load is just too heavy for that. And so at a certain point, you have to be ruthless and you have to prioritize and go after the ones that really matter for your business.
Absolutely. You can spend all day treading water in the reactive, so you need to break free. Let's. This one at the top here is very popular, so we're going to go to this next question. There's a lot of folks in the room, likewise, who have questions about moving into a new role or advancing their careers. What qualities do you guys look for when hiring a kick-ass CSM?
So I'd say solution-focused. Right? Looking for solutions for your customers, people that take pride in that. So to me, to some degree, it's personality traits, right? People that have empathy, people that want to help the customer succeed, not just help the customer out of a problem. So in my experience, professional services is a good area to kind of grow people into customer success, because most professional services try to build things for customers and create solutions for customers and are thinking on the customer's behalf. That's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would say just another characteristic I look for is intellectual curiosity. Yeah. It's just somebody who is curious about their customer, they're curious about the platform, they want to learn about the industry, and they enjoy it and are passionate about it.
Yeah. I love that. That desire to learn and to care, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Very good. Well, we are just out of time. Thank you guys so much for coming to our session. Thank you, Lorna and Sanders, as well.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job, everybody. Great job. Great job. All right, we're taking a break. I would suggest you come back before 4 p.m. It will fill up pretty quickly. Sessions will start, the evening keynotes will start right promptly at 4. So encourage you to come back, but for now, go enjoy the sun and a little bit of cloud cover. Fantastic job.